We all know the story of the Trojan horse, right? The giant wooden statue wheeled up to the gates. Well, forget that. Today's real threat, it's not something you fight at the gate. It's the trusted business partner you already invited inside. We're going to break down exactly how this modern-day Trojan horse operates, and how a massive global hack just proved that your firewall, well, it just can't protect you from this.
And this isn't just us saying it. Security analysts are sounding the alarm big time. See, the question we used to ask was, is my network secure? But that's not the right question anymore. Now it's got to be, do I really know who's already on my network? Because, let's be honest, the biggest vulnerability you have today isn't some weak line of code, it's a handshake.
Okay, to really get a sense of the scale of what we're up against, let's just start with a number. 200. Over 200 major companies have been hit. And that's just what we know about so far. But it's not just about the number of companies.
Now think about this. Those 200-plus companies, they're spread out across 80 different countries. Yeah, 80. So this isn't some small, localized issue. We're talking about a massive, global web of intrusions. This is a coordinated crisis, plain and simple.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll get into the specifics of the hack that really blew the lid off this whole thing. Then, we'll look at the new playbook these attackers are running. After that, we'll see why our old-school security is totally blind to this kind of threat, what the new defense has to look like, and finally, why this really changes the game for your business.
All right, so let's start with that wake-up call. It's an operation that was given the codename Salt Typhoon. And believe me, it is the perfect case study for this whole new era of corporate spying.
So get this. For years, since at least 2021, Salt Typhoon was quietly working its way into the very backbone of global communications. We're talking about huge targets, telecom giants, government agencies, even military networks. And their goal, wow, it wasn't just to grab some data and run. No, they wanted the ability to listen in on real-time calls and read texts from millions of people. They were basically building their own global surveillance machine.
But the raw power of the hack, that's not even the scariest part. Not by a long shot. The really alarming thing is how they pulled it off. Salt Typhoon basically wrote a whole new playbook for hiding in plain sight.
Which, of course, brings up the big question, right? Companies spend billions and billions on cyber defense. So how does an operation this huge stay completely hidden for years? Well, the answer is kind of brilliant. And also, really, really disturbing.
This right here? This is the new playbook. A state actor, they don't just kick down your digital front door anymore. Nah, that's too noisy. Instead, they use a totally legitimate, real, functioning private company as a front. In the Salt Typhoon case, they actually used 3 different companies. These guys become your new IT vendor or your partner, and while they're supposedly fixing your network, they're actually spying on you from the inside.
There's a name for this, by the way. Security experts call it an embedded threat. And it's so dangerous because, think about it, your firewall, all your defenses, they're built to spot enemies trying to get over the castle walls. They're not designed to spot the spy you've already invited in, given a security badge, and sat down in the war room as a trusted consultant.
And this whole reality, it just exposes this giant blind spot in how most companies approach security. It's like, we've spent all this time and money building our defenses to face one direction, while the real threat is coming from somewhere else entirely.
So what we're talking about here is a fundamental shift in mindset. Look, we've gotten really, really good at reactive security. The firewalls, the virus scans, all the digital alarms designed to stop an attack from the outside. But these embedded threats, they demand proactive security. It's not about blocking an attack anymore. It's about deeply investigating your partners before you even think about handing them the keys to the kingdom.
So if the old tools like firewalls aren't the answer, then what is? Well, the solution starts to look a lot less like your typical IT support team, and a whole lot more like a detective. This is where the modern corporate investigator comes in.
You can almost think of it like pre-crime for corporate security. These investigators, they're using advanced tech and AI-powered tools to do a super deep dive on any potential partner. We're talking history, finances, their entire digital footprint. They're mapping out whole supply chains to find the weakest link and uncovering hidden connections long before anyone even thinks about signing a contract.
And this whole proactive approach, it looks different depending on who you are. So for a giant Fortune 500 company, it might mean investigating a new supplier over in Southeast Asia to make damn sure it's not a front. For a law firm, it could be digging into the digital dirt of an opposing witness. Or for an insurance company, it's about proving that $1 million claim is actually part of a bigger fraud ring.
Every situation needs a different tool for a different threat.
Okay, let's pull all this together. When you look at the Salt Typhoon hack and this rise of embedded threats, what's the one thing you absolutely have to take away from all this?
The crucial point is this. Your security perimeter isn't your own office building anymore. It just isn't. In a world that runs on partnerships, your actual level of risk is defined by your most vulnerable partner. Just relying on your own internal IT team, well, that's like putting a huge lock on your front door, but then handing out keys to a dozen strangers and just, hoping for the best. It's not a strategy.
And that really leaves us with one final, pretty critical question you've got to ask yourself. You've probably invested a ton in securing your own network, right? But have you invested anything in knowing who you've already let inside that network? Because in this new battlefield, there's a very real chance that the biggest threat you face is the one you personally invited in.